am supposed to send you, Maurine, some of the recollections I have of our early Christmas days at McDonald, primarily those days when I was small and what we did on Christmas and how it might differ from our Christmases at the present time. I remember one Christmas especially well, and that was the year that we got a Victrola. Early that Christmas morning, I heard the sound of music coming up from downstairs, and it was the sound of an orchestra or a chorus on a Victrola record. And I went to the top of the stairs and looked down, and my father was there in the dining room playing the Victrola and trying to get us awake on Christmas morning so we could come down and see it. I do not remember how he got that Victrola in the house or where it had been, but it was sitting there in the corner of the dining room on Christmas morning, and he was having a very great, joyful time playing a record real loud so that we could hear it clearly upstairs and know that it was time to get out of bed and come downstairs. But as far as how we observed Christmas Day in our own home, we always got up at a fairly good time and had breakfast. I believe we opened our stockings, which we had hung up the night before on the mantel in the living room. We opened the stockings in the morning before breakfast. I get quite confused with the way we did things in our home at McDonald from the way we have done things at the places I have lived in Indiana and Washington and Pittsburgh and so forth. I hope I don't get too confused in this tape recording, that I will mix the ways up. Well, we opened our stockings and we always found in the stockings an orange and an apple and some walnuts and some other kinds of nuts, and many things were wrapped in many layers of paper and stuck together that we had difficulty getting them pulled apart. I think we got some pennies and maybe some nickels and dimes. I don't recall that we got very much money except a little bit of change, but each piece of change was wrapped in a separate piece of paper and took a while for us to get out of the stocking and unwrapped. After breakfast, which I think was just a normal breakfast for us at home, and I don't remember what we had, probably eggs, maybe bacon, maybe pancakes, but not all of them on one morning. We then opened our presents, which we had bought for each other, and which were piled on under the Christmas tree. I think this Christmas tree was erected in our parlor at McDonald, in one corner of the room, but I have very faint recollections of how we did it there. I am sure, however, that we'd opened all our things and looked at them. Most of our gifts were clothing, and I would get shirts and ties and handkerchiefs and maybe a game or two. And you folks got stockings and slips and such things, practical things more than things for amusement or things to play with. This took us quite a while to go around. I remember saying at that time that I wished I could hang up a stocking of my mother's instead of my own stocking, because her stocking was such a large one and would hold so much more than any that I might hang up on my own. But I never did that. After we had opened our presents and gathered up the paper and ribbons and stickers and so forth that were around, we got dressed and then went on the trolley that ran from McDonald to Oakdale. I am sure you remember that trolley. It wasn't a very big car, and a couple dozen people would filled it completely. The fare from McDonald to Oakdale was 5 cents a person. It took supposedly half an hour. Actually, it didn't take quite half an hour, but by the time they stopped and started and picked people up at a good many places and let people off also, and waited at Champion for the car coming from Oakdale to McDonald to meet us so we could get past, because the track was a single track, it was almost half an hour by the time we got down to Oakdale. And then we walked up the hill at Oakdale and went to Grandpa Wallace's home. I don't remember very much about the day at Oakdale, although I think we were there both for dinner and for a light supper. And Grandma Wallace put on a big feed for us, and she had everything. For dessert, she had pie and cake and peaches. I believe she always had, as the main dish, turkey. Grandpa Wallace sat at the head of the table, and I believe he asked the blessing or called on Father or Uncle John to do so. But at the conclusion of the meal, Grandpa Wallace also always returned thanks for the food that we had had. This was an old custom that was practiced in the old country and that had evidently been taught to him by his parents. I believe that Aunt Mary Campbell and Aunt Eliza Wallace from across the street at Oakdale came over and joined us in the Christmas dinner. I do not know whether this was every year or not. I remember that when we visited Grandpa Wallace in Oakdale, we always went across the street to say hello to Aunt Mary and Aunt Liza, and you remember them, I'm sure, very well, better than I do. I do not remember what we did in the afternoon at Oakdale, but I believe some of you who play the piano would go into the parlor at Oakdale and would play some things on the piano, and we would sing. I think we took some games with us down to Oakdale so that we would have something to do in the afternoon. You remember also that there was a player in the front of the parlor or entranceway to the house, which was a player, a record player, played with a metallic plate. And some of Uncle John's family got that eventually. It would be today considered a very valuable old player, a recorder. But you remember the tunes that it played on those metal discs, which were real loud, real large, and very sweet melodies as it played. One of the things I remember that Grandpa Wallace did on Christmas Day was to call Mary and me, or maybe Louise and me, to him, and he would give us a $5 gold piece for each person present. And it was our task, a delightful task, to hand down a $5 gold piece to each person who was present. That was a big gift in those days. It would seem enormous gift today to give $5 gold pieces, which are of such great value today with gold at the price that it is. But we always got a $5 gold piece from Grandpa Wallace for our gift. I don't know whether some of you helped Grandma Wallace clear the tables and wash the dishes or not, but I kind of have a feeling that some of you did help her some. And I think we usually stayed in Oakdale until the evening and walked down the hill and got the Oakdale to McDonald trolley car and went back home, tired and happy for a good Christmas day. Times have changed quite a bit over 50 years ago or 60 years ago. In more recent years, we have had family gatherings, and you have been at many of them at our house. Nancy and her family came from Ohio quite a few years, and Sam and his family would come up, and we had quite a nice gathering at our home here, either in Philadelphia or in Crafton, where we live. The day was a little different, however, than the way it was spent in the earlier years. Today we have radio and we have television, neither of which we had in the days when I was young and in those days which I have described as the days when we would go to Oakdale for Christmas Day. Now, we still have a big turkey dinner with all the trimmings, and the passing of the years has not changed the tradition of a fine Christmas dinner. And we have had those who have been able to do some good cooking of Christmas dinners. However, we now find it possible to turn on our radios and get good music, or turn on our television sets and maybe watch a college or a professional basketball or football game, which, as you know, I enjoy very much. Today, as I am recording this tape, which is December 18, 1980, we do not have any snow at all. The ground is bare. The passing of the years has meant that there is so much travel between cities on Christmas that one likes to see a dry road rather than a snowy road. Even though some of our children may get sleds for Christmas presents, I don't believe sleds are given as much as they used to be. And we don't long for snow on Christmas because we know too many people have to travel and want to see dry roads for their travel. But Christmases haven't really changed too much across the years. There is still a lot of commercialism. The stores are advertising bargains before Christmas and urging people to do their Christmas shopping early. And they still have departments that do the wrapping of gifts. And the roads are full of cars these days. I hate to drive my car around because there is so much traffic. One has to be very careful as he drives about, today or any time.